Welcome back to the Resilient Life Hacks podcast. I'm your host, Elizabeth Myers, and today I have with me emotional wellness coach Gloria Battini. And I am so excited and intrigued to hear her story and her methods and healing and resilience. So thank you and welcome to the show, Gloria.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Thank you for having me. I'm super
Yeah.
excited.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to have you on today. So please tell us a little bit about your story and your journey of what led you to where you are today.
Yes, my story starts very early. I didn't know it started that early in life until later on,
Yeah,
as I
that
come to
happens.
discover. Yeah, it does exactly. But no, it starts very early. But I'll give it to you the same way I discovered it. Right.
Okay.
So I was with a narcissist for about 15 years of my life, between the age of 18 and 32. So it's quite crucial years,
Mm-hmm.
really, of my life. And I had no idea that I was in a toxic relationship until the very last, like,
Mm-hmm.
couple of years,
Mm-hmm.
year or two. I had no idea. Everything that was happening in the relationship I thought was normal. The way that he was treating me, the way that he was talking to me. I just thought that, relationships are not perfect. There are ups and downs, and this is what being in a long time relationship means. I had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
I was really going through extreme anxiety, which turned into OCD.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, because then obviously I was talking to him, and that's what he was saying to me as well, that it all came from my job. I
Mm-hmm.
worked, I live here in London, and I worked in central London in events for 10 years. And it's
Mm-hmm.
quite a demanding industry. It's really fast paced, and it is stressful within itself. So that's what I connected my extreme anxiety and my OCD with. um anyway, I got to a point where I couldn't deal with it anymore. I couldn't handle it anymore, and I needed external help. I went to seek the help of a coach who specialized in anxiety, and I started dealing with my OCD in a healthier way, like really starting understanding it.
Mm-hmm.
What was it? Where it came from? Why did I feel that I had to do those things? Those rituals. If actually, if people are not familiar with OCD,
Mm-hmm.
OCD is an anxiety disorder where you feel the obsessive compulsion of do certain rituals throughout your day, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a way of keeping control when things are out of control,
Yeah.
basically. And then you get completely stuck in the cycle, and it gets completely like you feel like you are keeping things under control. In
Mm-hmm.
reality, it's not. It's completely out of control, and that's
Yeah.
that's what's happening to me. And
It's controlling you, in fact.
correct, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And it is controlling me because when I started seeing my coach, she made me do this first exercise at the beginning to start understanding the extent of my OCD, because it's something that you don't actually realize the extent of it when
Mm-hmm.
you are experiencing it.
Mm-hmm.
And she literally made me write it on paper, and she said, okay, record every single ritual you have during the day and
Mm-hmm.
write it down. And I got to the end of the day and I counted 39.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, which was a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them were quite lengthy as well.
Mm-hmm.
So the main things were concentrated in the morning before I go to work. When I was ready, I was literally ready, coat on, handbag
Mm-hmm.
um ready and everything, and it would take me 40 minutes to leave the house.
Mm.
And same thing before bed. I was ready, makeup off, washed everything, ready
Mm-hmm.
to go to bed. And it would take me another 45 minutes to actually go to sleep.
Mm.
So that was quite shocking, when I actually saw it on paper. It was
Mm-hmm.
really like a big realization.
So how
So
do you tell the difference between just a routine that you do and if a person were to have OCD? Is it the anxiety you feel if you don't do it? Is that the key difference?
Yeah, it's the compulsion, literally. Like if you feel like you have to do that thing, like one very common ritual that is that a lot of people with OCD share is the fact of checking the door,
Mhm,
right? You
mhm,
have to check the door X amount of times, and in X amount of cycles, you know,
mhm,
because if you don't do it, you feel that something bad is going to happen. So
mhm,
it's literally that thought of, I must do this because otherwise this is going to determine something else to happen,
mhm,
which, you know, if we're talking like this, if you don't suffer with OCD, you think, well, that's completely irrational, because
mhm.
how are you checking the door? How is that going to determine what's going to happen in the future, right?
Right.
But when you are experiencing it, it's a very different story. You are
Mhm,
literally like consumed with anxiety because you realize that it's impossible, but at the same time you cannot stop. So
mhm,
it's really, yeah, it's
mhm.
not a pretty thing to deal
Yeah.
with. And
I have experienced that in just a small taste on, some minor things. So I can relate to it. Like what you're saying makes sense to me, even though I haven't experienced it to that degree. But I can see how some people would go, "Oh, that's crazy. That's odd." But I'm like, no, I hear what you're saying. I get
yeah.
it.
Yeah, and it happens as well with I've spoken to so many people with checking the taps or the gas
Hmm.
around the house, or for some people is making sure that the cutleries and all the knives are, you know, in a certain order and everything. It's like keeping those things, yeah, making sure that everything is under control in a
Kind of
way.
like excessive safety checks, maybe.
Yes, yes, correct. And then you start counting. So you say, okay, so for example, one of the things for me before going to bed was checking that my bedroom window was closed. But then it's one thing checking that if the bedroom window is closed, and another thing obsessing about how the curtain is
Hmm.
aligned. You know, how many times have I actually checked the window? No, because if I haven't checked 3 times, it's not going to be sure that it's actually safe. You know,
Hmm.
it's these kind of thoughts.
Hmm.
And yeah, it really is a lot to deal with. And
Hmm.
you think that you're doing it to calm you down, but in reality is actually doing
Mm.
the opposite. It's
Yeah.
giving you more and more anxiety. So anyway, so I went to see my coach, and she was great, and we worked together for a total of a year and a half. But straight away after about, yeah, halfway through that, I would say, pretty much the OCD was halved. So a lot of the rituals were gone. And we approached it in a way that we would concentrate on one single ritual, and when that was resolved, we would move to another one. And so with half of it gone, I had half of the anxiety. So when you have half of the anxiety, you see clearly.
Mm.
You know, there's some sort of clarity that comes to you, and you start noticing things that you didn't have space for before. You know, you didn't have space
Mhm.
in your brain and in your
Yeah.
thoughts for before. And that's where I started noticing the behaviors that were not normal,
Mm.
you know, with my ex. And that's where I started picking up on things and started seeing that actually this anxiety might not all come from me or from my job. I think that
Mhm.
a lot of stuff that he's doing, it's actually giving me a lot of this.
Mhm.
And then I started saying those things out loud, you know, expressing the way I felt and saying, you know, there are a lot of financial issues, for example, or he was smoking a lot. He was really addicted to cigarettes to the point where it would actually influence the finances in a heavy way. So I started raising those things that I felt weren't right. You know, we'd been together for such a long time, and I wanted to talk about those things. And that's where I realized what I was dealing with. I
Mm.
was completely shut down. Always, I was gaslighted. It was always my fault. It was always the way I was seeing things. It was never, you know, how things were. But you know, you have anxiety, so that fogs your mind. You know, so you're not seeing this clearly. And then it would take me through arguments that were hours and hours long, to the point that I would get to the end of it and I would just forgot why we started. And he would turn around and say, you see, now you don't remember, which means it's not important. But obviously that was all a form of manipulation, you know. And then there was a lot of stuff in intimacy as well. So I started working as I worked more and more on myself, and I noticed those things, I distanced myself. You know, and
that's often a thing in relationships. When one person begins to get healthier, then it highlights where the other person needs to work on things, and they're usually not real happy about that at first.
No.
But can you explain for our listeners who may not know what gaslighting is? Because that's kind of a narcissistic specific term that we don't use very often.
Yeah, it is. And I didn't know what it was at the beginning either. It took a friend of mine that says, actually, I heard this thing. It's called gaslighting. I think that's what's happening to you. And I looked into it, and that was exactly it. So gaslighting is a very deep manipulation that narcissists or people with narcissistic personality disorder use. It's a way where they make you believe a distorted reality. So when they make you think what you think isn't true. But to the point, because if we are talking and I'm trying, you know, if you and I are talking and I'm trying to tell you, no, you've invented that, you're going to be like, no, I haven't. You know, you're going to say that clearly, and we can have a conversation about. With a narcissist, they would make you think and convince you that you're wrong. And by the end of the conversation, you would think that you're crazy completely. Because from one point, you would feel like, well, I had a point. And then you would get to the end of the conversation, didn't know where you started, didn't know what the point you wanted to make was. It's when they confuse you, when they offer you a different version of reality that is not your own.
So is that something they're aware of, or is it just part of their personality where it's the way they operate and they're not aware of what they're doing either?
So they're very aware. They're very aware. They are not willing to change either. So they are very aware of what they're doing, because for them, it's not about the relationship. It's not about the other person, but it's about the supply that they get. So we call the narcissists, so narcissists are basically, they have basically an inflated sense of self. And they need constant sources of admiration and idealizations and these sort of things. So when they are in a relationship, you are in a relationship with them and you are in love with the person. They are not in love with the person. They are in love with the idea, and they are in love with what they get, with the fact that they get love and admiration from you. And that's very, very intentional. Very intentional. They don't decide to grow up this way. Obviously, it has to do with deep rooted trauma from childhood and everything. But nonetheless, they are very aware of their behaviors. I did experience that. I remember this was already when I left the relationship, and I cannot remember, for the sake of it, I can't remember what we were talking about, but I remember having to go back to the house that we were in together to pick up some stuff. You know, this was fairly recently. I'm talking like a couple of weeks after, or 3 weeks after I had left. And there was a big argument. And then following the argument, I received a text message like that you can see, that said, I knew everything that I was doing to you. I manipulated you into thinking this. I bullied you into that. Like every single thing that he had done, it was in the text message, right?
Really?
And to which I was like, okay, then this confirms everything that I've always suspected. And then what happened was 2 days after, I think this was, we were again talking about something else, and he was again started an argument. I can't remember, but I remember a discussion, being raised, and I literally said to him, "Why are you doing this? You already said that you knew everything that you were doing. You already messaged me that." He said, "I never sent him text message." which isn't true because I am looking at the text message
Right,
and I
right.
am talking to you, right? I
Yeah.
was looking while we were having that
Oh,
conversation.
yeah.
So it's literally denying the evidence. It's
Mm.
literally manipulating you. At that point, I had already left. So I think maybe what the attempt was there to make me believe that the text wasn't true. I don't know.
Just
Another
a glitch in the phone.
exactly, yeah, another way of gaslighting or something. I
Yeah.
don't know, but
Yeah.
yeah, they're very aware.
So
Yeah.
when you realized that your relationship was also contributing to your anxiety and it wasn't all
Yeah.
things that you could solve yourself, what was the next step that you did then before that? Did you try to, work with them on that and then realize that was impossible, or how did you approach that?
Yeah, so I spoke to my coach and I said that I was noticing those things coming out in the relationship, and she asked me what I was prepared to do about it,
Mm.
because we were together for a long time, we were married and everything. And I said to her that I wanted to ask for help, and I wanted to see whether it could be whether there was something that could be done about it. So I spoke to him and I said, look, I felt that the problem obviously was with the communication. So I said to him, I don't think we're communicating well, because when I am trying to say something to you, you come back with something that it's not even close to what I'm talking about,
Mm-hmm.
which is obviously part of the manipulation, but I
Mm-hmm.
didn't necessarily know at that point, right?
Right.
So I said, I feel like we should talk to someone. And he's always refused. Always. He said, no, this is just the way we are. It's not about me. It's because you have anxiety. It's stuff that you should talk about with Alex. Alex is my coach.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's not, I don't want to go to therapy. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. I don't want to ask for help. It's not about me. So I was completely shut down.
Yeah.
Then after that, I tried to work on the relationship by myself. So I said, okay, so what is it that I can do that's within my power to try and, save this,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and that was the lowest point, because I was completely humiliated. Like, I went above and beyond for somebody that was not interested in saving anything.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a very, very low point. And after that, I was really overweight at the time as well. So after that, I had to do something about it, and I decided to focus on my body, focus on myself. And I started working on losing the weight and everything, which gave me a great confidence. Obviously, when I lost the weight and I was finally myself again, and it gave me the confidence to say, I am not gonna do this to myself anymore. Like, I'm not. If you're not working on this, and you are in the same marriage as I am, so if you're not willing to do this, why do I have to do this on my own? I tried so much, but I completely then at that point felt that I was going into a completely different direction.
Mm-hmm.
And however, I didn't want to give up. I'm not a quitter.
Mm-hmm.
So I asked for help one more time. He used to change jobs very often. That's another thing that's quite typical. He used to change jobs very often, and I just couldn't take it anymore. There was no financial security, just problems and debt and all that. And I decided to ask for help to his family. And I said, look, to his mom, and I said, look, this is the situation. I'm going to be very honest with you. I feel that if something doesn't change, the only thing I can do is leave, because it's got to a point where I have to protect myself. I cannot do it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And she said, yeah, absolutely. We're going to help you. Come home for Christmas. This was, December. Come home for Christmas. We're going to talk when you're here. And don't worry, we're going to give you support. Everything is going to be okay. I went home for Christmas. I cannot tell you how many times I tried to speak to these people. It was never a good time. No, now people are coming in an hour. And I'm like, it's an hour. Like, can we just not sit down and talk about it? It's not 5 minutes. It's an hour. We can do something. no, there was never a good time. And at that point I was like, okay, I'm just not going to ask anymore. Then came back to London early January, and after a week I just said to him, look, I'm sorry, but I'm done. I've literally felt completely drained, stood in front of him, and I said, I'm not in love with you anymore. I have got nothing left to give. Literally, like if I can't even find the strength to even like give a hug or anything. I can't. Like I'm done. I completely dry. Everything is gone. So I have to go. And when I said that, he said, oh, okay, like this.
Wow.
Which after 15 years,
Yeah.
it's not something that you expect. You know?
Yeah.
And then the days after, though, he went very obsessive and very, it was quite difficult to deal with. And there was a lot of shouting and a lot of, not very pretty things, until, I just left. I packed my bags and I was like, I'm out, I'm sorry. And I just went away. I could not be in the house anymore. Like, I really couldn't. So so that's how I got here. I got here. I've experienced this, and then that was a real transformation. As soon as I left the house, by the way, that I went to live on my own, the rest of the OCDs that I had gone.
Oh, really?
Yes, completely. Wow. As I went to live on my own, I did not suffer from OCD ever since. Nothing. Not even one ritual, not even one thought, nothing. Wow. It was it was quite like, defined. Like, and and then I had a lot of people coming to me, and as I was sharing my story, they were telling me that they felt very inspired, that they didn't know obviously what was going on, and because I kept to myself a lot and stuff. And they started using that word, like being inspired. I'd really admire you for doing this and that and that. And so I decided, I said, you know what? I like working in events, but I don't feel like I'm actually making a difference, And I went to speak with my coach to see what she thought about me, training to become a coach as well and helping others. And she was really supportive as well. So she helped me out to find a good school where to go study and everything. And and that's what I did. So I decided that if I was able to inspire somebody just by living, my story, then if I could be trained and then help actually people, like, on a daily basis, that would be even more amazing.
Right. Yeah,
So,
definitely. So I can imagine, if you're dealing with a person in a relationship where their issue is that they're completely focused on themselves and them being right and you being wrong, it would be nearly impossible, I think, without a miracle, to convince that person to go to counseling or to get help or to even acknowledge that they were contributing to the problem. That just really sounds like a catch-22 where, how do you work through that? That just really sounds like a difficult place. I know, to a certain extent, all of us are selfish in some ways. But so say there's a person who's in a relationship and they suspect they might be dealing with a narcissist. How do you tell the difference between, oh, this is just run-of-the-mill human selfishness, and no, this is like seriously like I don't know, a disease? Is it called a disease or a dysfunction of some sort?
Yeah, it's a personality disorder. However, and this is what I always want to for people to understand, because you don't need a diagnosis to have an abusive behavior. Does that make sense? So there's a huge spectrum. So even if somebody isn't diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, but they are gaslighting you, that's abuse. You don't need the diagnosis to recognize that that's abuse.
But I think part of the issue that you described was not realizing that you were being gaslighted and accepting that alternate reality of, oh, this is my fault. So I don't know, it just seems like a really difficult situation to find your way out of.
There's one thing that is never, ever going to lie, and that's your instincts. The brain can lie, the brain can make you believe whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And the heart can as well, because you are going to feel like you want to love this person. But
Mm-hmm.
your instincts, that's the essence of who you are. That is never, ever going to lie. So in all those, episodes of gaslightings that I went through, there was always at the bottom something that made me go, is this normal?
Yeah. It feels
It's
a little off. It doesn't feel
yeah,
right.
is this normal? It doesn't, I'm not sure,
Mm.
even though I thought, well, all relationships have ups and downs,
Mm-hmm.
but it really made me feel in a way that I was actually questioning it. I was actually going, I'm not sure.
Mm.
But what I did, because I was overcome with anxiety and fear and everything, like many people in that situation, I shut it off.
Yeah.
And I said, oh no, can't be.
Mm.
No, it can't be.
Mm-hmm.
This is a different story, because you're not ready to see the reality yet.
Mm-hmm.
If you're especially if you're going through stuff like this, which can be any other type of anxiety or anything else that you might be going through that is really taking a lot of you, it's much harder to go and see what the instinct says.
Mm-hmm.
It's much, much harder,
Yeah.
but it's always there. So every time, every single person that I speak to, I chat to a lot of people on Instagram, and they always ask me, come across my profile, and they ask me, any question. To be honest with you, I'm very open to talk, because I know that it's there, and their support is needed 100%.
Yes.
And I always say, what does your instinct say? Is there a voice? Can you hear a voice at the back of your head, in your mind, or down? What does your instinct say? Does this sound a bit fishy? Does it sound like doesn't necessarily feel right? And the majority of the time is like, well, yeah, because I don't know why, like, that's not what I said.
Yeah.
I don't know why. And then I said, well, okay, then trust your instincts always.
Yeah.
Trust.
So what do you do now to help people who are dealing with this kind of situation? How are you involved in that?
Yeah, so I'm a coach, and I help women mainly, but I do have clients who are men as well, who are either coming out of toxic, so people who have realized that this is what they're going through, and they need help to create time for themselves and heal before they leave. Or people who have just come out of the relationship and need to find their feet again, or people who have experienced the toxic relationship, because it's not only romantic relationships. You can experience narcissistic abuse even from your parents or your siblings or friendships or in the workplace. It's so many different scenarios. And so the third group is people that have experienced it in the past, and the trauma is still there. So I help them overcome whatever happened, with that relationship, whether it's their parents again, whenever that happened, and move on from it. So I do one-to-one coaching, but also I have something that I am that I love very much. And so one of the things that I noticed after I came out of the relationship was the fact that if I had somebody that went through the same, it would have been so much quicker for me to leave. It wouldn't have taken 2 years. I genuinely thought that I was the only one experiencing that. I didn't say anything to my parents. I didn't say anything to my friends. I genuinely thought that it was just me. And thank goodness I had my coach, because she helped me a lot. But there were some things that I held back as well, because I wasn't sure what it was. So I've created this community. This is for women only, though. I've created this community of survivors of narcissistic abuse. I call them warriors, my warriors. And it's a place where it's on a membership basis, but it's a place for people who have experienced that and now want to heal, but in an environment where they're not on their own. So they want to heal surrounded by people that know exactly what it is that they're going through. because it's not, even if it's not a romantic relationship, but it's a family relationship, the dynamics are the same.
Yeah.
You know, the manipulation is the same. So when you say, you know, I feel like I've been gaslighted, they know exactly what that is and what they're talking about. And they not only that, but they also know exactly the feeling that you are having when experiencing that.
Yeah.
So it's very powerful.
To be among a group of friends who won't say, oh, I think you're crazy, or I think it's in your head, or it's your fault, you know, to have that camaraderie of people who understand has got to be huge.
Yeah.
Is there any hope for somebody who's in a relationship like that, that relationship could be healed and could go on? Is there another alternative other than leaving the relationship? I mean, obviously that depends a lot on the other person. And we already talked about how difficult that is, but is there a hope there that some of these narcissistic people do choose to heal or do the work?
It's very rare.
Yeah.
Very, very rare. And still, if they did choose to heal, my personal, what I would do is leave anyway, is leave, distance myself and say, okay, you take your time to do your work. You heal yourself, you work on this on your own. And I work on myself and my trauma that I've got from this relationship on my own. And then we'll see where we can go. I would still distance myself completely. Yes. There are certain narcissists that they realize what is happening to them, and they realize that is a lot of past trauma that is bringing this out in them. And they decide to do something about it, but it is a personality disorder. So it's literally the way that they are.
Right.
Even if it's within the spectrum, it is something that's of their character. So it's very complicated to overcome that. But if you realize that you are in a relationship like that, the best advice that I can give you is to, if you cannot leave yet, because it can also be that you're not ready to leave the relationship yet, talk to somebody who doesn't know them. Because what they do is that they unleash their flying monkeys. That's what they're called in the jargon. But they convince other people that you are the crazy one. So it's very important that if you have any suspicion, speak to somebody who is in no way connected to them, because you need to keep yourself safe, mentally, emotionally, and obviously physically as well, safe. So speak to somebody who is not involved, who doesn't know them, you know, whether it's a stranger or professional, whatever it is, but definitely who is not involved with them. And that's some support that you can get for sure. Yeah.
I know that you're big on self-care, taking the time for yourself, which is also a topic I like to bring up a lot because I neglected that until the point I couldn't, you know, and then I had to make that a priority. And I know that that's important for all of us, no matter what kind of relationship you're in or not in. So can you just talk a little bit about that, of the importance of that and how we can create space for that?
Yeah, absolutely. So ultimately, if you are in any relationship and the person that you're with makes you feel guilty for taking time for yourself, that's a sign that the relationship is toxic, number one. So, you know, somebody who truly loves you wants you to thrive, wants you to feel good, wants you to have that time for yourself, even if it means that you're away from them. So it's very important that we point this out. And in terms of cutting this time, you know, cutting out the time for yourself, it's hugely important because it isn't selfish, first of all. Instead, it's actually the least selfish thing that you can do. It's literally an act of love to take care of yourself, because when you do that, imagine your phone, okay? We go around with our phones all the time. What can you do with your phone if it doesn't have the battery full? If it's on 1%?
Nothing.
You know, nothing, literally, you know, you're gonna make it, and then it's there. And if you're not near a charger, it's gonna stay off for however long you need, right? So it's super, and you work the same as a human being. So your battery needs to be kept charged. because otherwise you cannot help anybody else. You cannot be of support to the people you love. You cannot work properly. You know, you cannot. So if you love them, then love yourself first.
Yeah.
That's the number one thing. Love yourself first, look after yourself first, because then when you do that, the quality of time, the quality of attention that you give them, it's greater.
Yes, much better for sure. Yeah, I realized that too, just as a mom. I was taking care of everybody else first, but I realized I can be a much better mom if I take care of myself first and then take care of them. And it felt selfish at first, but then I realized it's not selfish, it's necessary. And just like you said, that's a way I can love others, is by taking care of myself, so I'm around for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, completely agree. And I do the same. When I started working as a coach, I wanted to help everyone. I was like, oh, anybody who needs help, I'm here, But then it really got to a point where, with being a coach and doing especially one-to-one sessions, that's a lot of energy, which is amazing. It's an amazing exchange, and it's such a privilege for me to be able to do that. But it takes a lot out of a person, as same for the client. There's a lot of energy that the client uses for that, and it's amazing. But if I do that in a day for 10 clients, the number 10, it's not going to get the same energy than the number one, and that's unfair. That's unfair. I cannot do that. But it took time to understand as well. And
it does.
Because ultimately that's what you want to do as a coach. You want to change the world. So you're like, I'm here, I'm changing the world. Right? But it's super important. So now I have learned that first of all, I do not take any clients before a certain time of the day, because I have things that I do to look after myself and everything. And then I have a certain amount of clients that I take at any one time, because I want to give them the absolute best. And I know that if I am doing back-to-back sessions and stuff like that, it's not going to be the best.
Right.
So it's super important that if you want to help others, you start from you.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And so if our listeners do want to connect with you and learn more, or maybe, find out about the coaching, where can they do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I hang out a lot on Instagram. It's my favorite platform. Definitely. I have a lot of fun there, and I have a lot of free content there as well. So I do a lot of informative videos. So if you are not sure whether you are in a toxic relationship or not, there are a bunch of videos that you can watch. And you will recognize the behaviors, you will recognize what it is, and it will definitely help you out. And my handle is at Gloria Battini, which is my name, surname, all one word. And then all my links are there as well. But you can find me, if you don't have Instagram, you can have a look at my website, which is theselfmasterycoach.co.uk. And you can find all information there about, all my contacts, a little bit about my story, but I shared a lot here as well today. And then as well as the membership details as well. So with the membership, I would really like to say that it's a space that I really protect, and it's not open to anyone. I always speak to the people before I invite them in, because it's super important that we are all comfortable, and it's a very sacred place for me. Yes, 100%. Yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for your willingness to come on and be so open and share with us your struggles and your journey and your wisdom that you've gained along the way. I know this could really be helpful to some people who are struggling with the same thing, but haven't been able to name it or identify it. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you for having me. Honestly, the more I can spread awareness and raise awareness about this, the better, because it really also is engraved in society. It's not just about intimate relationships. I know many people who have experienced this at work, and it really needs to stop. We really need to be protected, definitely. So thank you.
Yes. And it's not a common thing you hear about often. So I hope that our listeners can learn from you and can share that knowledge with the people around them too.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. And if you want to contact me and just send me a message, that just DM me on Instagram. I'm there. Don't worry.
Okay. All right. Sounds great. Thank you.
Thanks.